And I'm gonna keep on loving Raid. Hello, everyone. Bront, CatHerder. We're having some fun talking Raid Shadow Legends. We are here on the free-to-play. We'll probably bounce around to the main a little bit, but I want to talk about something that may actually be a little bit controversial, especially given some of the videos that I have put out in the past couple of weeks. I am actually still enjoying Raid. I have in the intro talk about we're having some fun talking Raid Shadow Legends. We're having some fun playing Shadow Legends, and I wanted to talk with you guys about some of the things I'm actually still enjoying about Raid, just to let you know it's not all negative. It's not all things that we are trying to get fixed by Polarium. There's a reason that people are passionate about the game and want things to be better, because there are so many things about the game that we all do love and enjoy. So let's talk about some of my favorites. So honestly, to this day, one of my favorite pieces of Raid content that has ever been put out is the original Faction Wars. And I'm talking Faction Wars normal. Now, that's not to say Faction Wars Hard is horrible. It has issues, but part of the reason I find that this is such a good piece of content is because it makes you, with fairly natural barriers, build unique teams, teaching you a little bit about team building, teaching you a little bit about how to manage specific bosses, not letting you simply not simply letting you take cookie cutter teams from every single faction and recreate them, while you certainly can do that to some extent, because honestly, some aspects of each team are relevant for every boss. But because every boss is just a little bit different, there's a little bit of changes you may want to make to some teams, where turn meter control may be more important for some than for others. For example, you might need revivers a little bit more against some than you versus you might not. Cleansers may be more valuable than not cleansers in some cases. There's all kinds of interesting little wrinkles to Faction Wars, at least as you're kind of going up and going through it. And even to the point of where eventually learning to be able to farm stage 21 on auto without any issues is still kind of a nice achievement, even after you've beaten it. And the prize, Lydia, one of the best champions in the game. Seriously, she really is still to this day an MVP in content that they continue to put out in 2025. What I think is great about it is there's an overall arcing level of progression and accomplishment. So like, I just finished my orcs last night and they're all finished. So I've got all the stars here. But in a faction where I don't have all the stars, I actually was able to go back and clean up a few of the floors recently, at least, because this faction has gotten better as well. And then of course with my Shadowkin, I'm just worried about 21, and I can't get through 21 right now. I know what I need to get. And then, yes, unfortunately, one of the disadvantages of Faction Wars is there is a level of Faction Wars of you do need to get new champions. But in a game that is a champion collector like Raid, where there's a ton of interesting and fun champions, and in fact there's such a good variety of champions that it's not just a matter of I need this specific champion. It is often I need a champion that can fill this role, or somebody else that means I don't need that role. So that gives you a lot of flexibility to craft the teams that you want to craft for Faction Wars. And there's an overall good sense of progression, as well as not a feeling of being unable to do something purely because of RNG or purely because you just cannot get the next step forward. And that's, I think, one of the reasons that, Faction Wars Hard has failed a little bit. Some of the stages rely on RNG to complete, meaning you have to run them several times over. Because some of the keys are very fickle on how you have to deal with them, sometimes you can run a complete faction crypt, finish it, and on the last turn that ends the event, you lose the third star, or even the second star in some cases, where you have somebody die on the very last hit and they do a death for death exchange. And as a result, you beat the floor, but you only get 1 star on it. And that type of stuff is very frustrating. And while that can certainly happen on normal Faction Wars, it's much less pronounced. And overall, normal Faction Wars feels achievable. It feels like a goal that anybody can achieve with a little bit of time. And I think that's kind of where they may have missed the boat just a little bit with Hard Faction Wars. I understand wanting to make it difficult. I understand wanting to make it something that endgame players would feel challenged by. But as a result, they have made it to something that some endgame players feel that they will just never accomplish, and they have kind of lost the desire to do progression in these things with how they've managed it, and it's kind of unfortunate. But we're going to try to keep positive here, and I still think that even hard faction wars, which, has its problems, has some good points as well. There's some decent rewards in there just for farming it normally, even if you're not going to go for all the stars. And normal faction wars is some of the best rewards in the game. In addition to Lydia, in addition to the track rewards, the ability to build perception gear is amazing. Relentless gear, or resilience gear, I should say, is, it's worth silver eventually, and until it's worth silver, it's actually a good filler set for a lot of teams as well. So, and forge gear is nice, easy to deal with, and a good resource to have as well. And we cannot forget the fact that glyphs are what you get from faction wars as well. Glyphs are one of the most important parts of the game. Now, I realize this may be a little bit controversial, but I actually really enjoy Live Arena, even on my free-to-play account. Is it perfect? No, it's not perfect. There's very few game modes in this game that are perfect, but Live Arena brings some interesting challenges, gives you a chance to try to outthink your opponent, gives you a chance to try interesting team combinations, and when it's at its best, you can have some interesting fights where both sides have a chance to win. In fact, I had a really, really good fight on my main somewhat recently where it was tooth and nail, down to the wire, and the end result was if I had gotten a turn before the enemy had gotten a turn, I would have won instead of them. And it was literally that close. And it went for 4 minutes. It went back and forth. We had some revivals. We had things turning around on both sides. It looked like it was going to be a slaughter early on, and it turned into a interesting and fun fight. And it still only went on for 3-4 minutes, so it wasn't like a horrible waste of time. And I had a lot of fun afterwards, even when I lost. On my free-to-play, it is definitely fun to beat teams that I feel should be significantly better than my team is on my free-to-play. It's definitely fun to match up against other people with similar count levels, so sometimes I match up against those, and those are fun fights. It is interesting to see what people are picking when I'm getting people that are playing actively, and it's overall just kind of been fun. But at the same time, I do understand that it is not for everyone, and that is part of the frustration with the old win a live arena battle, which has finally turned into a participate in live arena, which I think hopefully will help that a little bit more. It's unfortunate that there is a chance for you to have a win 3 live arena quest, and the opportunities for that to change are things for Sand Devil and Shogun or Hydra and Chimera keys, which people generally don't want to run in the middle of the week. So Polarium certainly could handle those quests better, but if those quests weren't as egregious, if the Win 3 Live Arena was just one of several different things that was an option, maybe that would be nice, and maybe if all the rest of them weren't horrible as well, it wouldn't be too bad. To be fair, on my main, I don't really care which one of those I hit, other than I don't want to run the keys when I'm not ready to run the keys. But if we're just talking about, doing Live Arena, well, I do Live Arena every night anyway. The bigger problem is you do have to check them before you go into Live Arena, because otherwise, if you check and then you change out of whatever it is, and it gets the 3 win Live Arenas, that could be really annoying if you've already done all 5 of your Live Arena wins for the day that you were going for. But still, I think Live Arena has a lot of positives, and there are things that Polarium certainly could do to make it better, but that doesn't mean that it's not an interesting and fun thing that they have added in the game, and I do want to commend them for that. Why, yes, we're in the index. Not exactly a game mode, but I guess maybe it is. One of the things that I think Raid has done better than a lot of other gacha games that I have seen and that I have played is that there is so many different champions in this game. There are so many different usable champions in this game. And there are so many different variety of champions in this game that can fill similar roles and do fun things. And while yes, there are certainly best in slot champions in several cases, it doesn't mean that you have to always use the best in slot champions, particularly because there's a chance you may not have them. Plus, with the different variations on these champions, sometimes different champions combine with other champions to form better teams than the individuals might alone, and that gives you some fun champion combinations. It is fun, particularly in the early and mid game, pulling shards, because there's always the chance that, hey, I don't have a lot of interesting Bannerlords legendaries. So, hey, maybe I could get a Timid. He might be kind of interesting for this account. Or Staltus would be absolutely amazing. Or heck, if I could get a Taurus or Marichka, that would be absolutely amazing. Or you go into the Sacred Order here and, a Wixwell would be a Gount changing on this. A Cupidus would be interesting. Cardiel would be great. I can go into these factions and name 3 to 5 legendaries that it would be amazing on this account. And in some cases, I can name epics that would still be very, very helpful on my free-to-play account. Going to switch over to my main for a minute. And on my main here, I recently pulled over a new champion that I've actually been super excited with. I got Tuskor recently. And this account, definitely much more mature. It is certainly harder to pull new and interesting champions. But Tuskor is the first direct damage dealer I have gotten on this faction since Skrank and Grush the Mangler. It's been that bad, because, there's a couple of them here. Moto would certainly have been fine. I would have been excited about him, actually. Biggin would have been just fine, would have been super helpful as well. But there's not a lot of direct damage dealers. Grazor probably would have worked okay, and Gurgo would have been good too, but they were talking voids at that point in time. But seriously, I've been struggling with Ogryn and, got Tuskor here, and we go to Faction Wars, and now I'm at 11 stars in Ogryn. I was stuck at 5 and wasn't even able to full auto stage 1 because I just couldn't do enough damage to make the waves relevant. Tuskor was able to simply one-shot most of the waves, or in some cases, one-shot an enemy with his A3 and then get a next turn, which would power up his damage just a little bit more, and then AoE kill a bunch of champions as well, and I could be able to cycle him through the other waves, and he's not even fully booked. I'll do a guide on him later. I'm actually really excited about this dude. He's a lot of fun, mostly for Ogryn tribes and probably for wave clear more than anything else, but he has been really, really fun to play with. So again, super, super excited to get a champion, which, you know what? That's the kind of thing that makes these games fun and worth playing. And that's one of the things I think Raid does better than anything else. There are tons and tons of champions. We're talking 900, 950-ish champions. You can do the math if you want to here. And there are a lot of really good champions. And there's a lot of champions that will change other people's accounts when they pull them. And that unfortunately is one of the things that, yes, endgame players tend to miss out on just a little bit more because they have more champions. So it becomes harder to pull a game changer. And that's kind of where things like your Faction Wars and eventually your Faction Wars Hard can start to be exciting and fun for players again, because they give you people chances to be excited for new champions on your account because they can help you progress in areas that you otherwise were probably mostly done with. Looking to start a brand new account in 2025 with Raid? Use my link down below, set up a new account with a brand new email, and you can start off with Elenarl, a wonderful legendary that can do all kinds of fun stuff for you. And at level 15, you'll also get a Tagore, a wonderful support reviver who has been a big carry for me on my accounts. You also use the code Demon Slayer to get Tholan as well, and to get Lemonisi at the moment because Lemonisi is currently the free login champion. Start yourself off with 3 great legendaries and a wonderful epic, and enjoy starting a brand new Raid journey in 2025. I've been actually pretty thankful that Raid has been dealing with these event dungeons a little bit more. I really liked the Coalition event, and I understand that that was not a universal sentiment, but generally, most people I have talked to have thought the Coalition event was at least interesting and an improvement over the general Raid experience. There were certainly flaws with it, such as the repeatable quests being off whatever the current events were 100% of the time. In most cases, I guess it wasn't 100%. There were like 2 or 3 times that actually did line up with an event of some kind. But for the most part, it tended not to, which was frustrating for some people doing those repeat events quests. And some people got a little bit frustrated with the challenge of some of the top level rewards to get those. But honestly, given that there were so many interesting and good free rewards for any level account, even on my free-to-play where I definitely did not complete it, I think I got to like 1,200 points, or 12,000 points, I should say. Maybe 1,300 points. But regardless, it was a bunch of free stuff I got, generally for playing the game, mostly in ways I was already playing. In a couple of cases, it was doing something very specific that I was probably going to do anyway or was fun, like booking Tholan. To be fair, Booking Tholen was something I probably did earlier on my main account that I might have done if I hadn't had any particular quest to do it, where booking him was worth points for the coalition event. But outside of that, for the most part, I thought that the challenges were interesting. I thought that the game mode was certainly fun and an interesting way to unite the community into doing something collaborative that helped everybody out and generally gave everyone some fun stuff. Now, could it have been better? Yes, but it was also the first time they had run the event. But I'm also in the event dungeon because the event dungeon itself, I think, has been kind of fun most of the time. Now, this last event dungeon was definitely rough, and I understand some of you guys struggle with the event dungeon in every form it has been, and that's unfortunate, but you're going to struggle in dungeons sometimes anyway. That's just kind of the way things work. The game is not built to be just, I can just hit the button and auto-complete it, because if you could just hit a button and auto-complete every single piece of content, that would actually be a very boring game. So struggling on some things I think is interesting. Finding teams for these new dungeon events every couple of months is fun. And the fact that these events bring some new and interesting champions, they bring some interesting gameplay with the coalition event. They bring the different thing with the tavern right here, not the tavern, but the bastion, where we've got this different skin here, I think is kind of cool. There are things I think they could have done either a little bit better or maybe made a little more interesting. For example, I know they've done the bastion a little bit, but maybe it might be kind of fun for like some of the dungeons to have been tweaked slightly during this event, either because maybe certain drop rights may have changed slightly or like certain gear may have changed slightly. Maybe during the Chaos Awaken event, it might be an interesting thing to let people actually farm like bolster from one of the bosses instead of not bolster. And you could actually, put this stuff in the dungeons as well. So you change the dungeon layout slightly to add some of this particular material too. Stuff that might be kind of fun. But the fact that they are open to these possibilities, I think is great. And the fact that we are getting new content that is trying to change the way we play the game slightly, I think is a fun and exciting reason to be continuing to play Raid Shadow Legends. And that brings me to my final point, is that it's taken Polarium a while to listen to the community and to listen to content creators, but they are starting to listen. They have made several changes. Anything from the instant upgrades, which to be fair, I think could be better, but at least it exists. Things like the ability to filter out champions that are not upgradable. That was a big thing. And then once they put that in there, that was huge. The ability to do sliders for brews rather than have to hit the brews 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and keep on going. Absolutely amazing. I mean, this was really annoying when I had to do this multiple times. Now I can just do that and we're good to go. They've now done that for chickens as well. And I kind of torn on that one because the chickens was kind of nice to be able to just click a couple times because you use them differently, but whatever works. And it's still helpful. The fact that you could use the books you used to have when I was upgrading skills, I would have to actually, go in and use a book here, and I could only use up to 6 books at a time. And now it's a slider, nice little quality of life improvements. The market is certainly a little bit nicer now that they've put it all in one thing. It's not perfect. They could certainly fix this part of the market to be a little bit better. I think the prices on some of this gear is a little off. I still think that the refresh should be shifted down to the bottom instead of the top because it doesn't look great up there in my opinion. And some of these other shops could use a little bit of help. The Bazaar could certainly use a little bit of help, although we'll grab those here. And am I close to grabbing that? Not quite yet. But the fact that they have been listening and making some of these changes, and there have been some quality of life changes, and we're getting some champion buffs, and we're getting them listening about content and making changes for content, I think is good. I still think they need to be a little more proactive and a little less worried about the implications of some of these changes. And I think that's the biggest downfall that Polarium still has as a developer, is they are afraid to make changes because they are worried about the impact and they are worried about the negative publicity for some changes. And here's the thing. Not every change is going to be a banger. Not every change is going to be taken over well by the community. And in some cases, changes that are not taken well by the community are still good for the community. Take Hydra, for example. I'm not going to say that every change Polarium made in Hydra was good. They were not. But several of the changes Polarium made were good. They cut down the amount of time we're spending in Hydra by about 1/3 by changing the way the times work. They made the challenge more interesting with some of the ways that things ramp up, because that was actually their original design goal in the first place. They have made it to where it's a lot harder to simply have a team that never gets digested. I think that's actually a positive, because otherwise it was very easy to get to a team that could never be digested in the first place, because you could always kill the heads. And I think that it was actually a problem from both a balance perspective as well as just a entertainment perspective, because if it was simply a matter of one massive power trip going in Hydra, can be fun occasionally, but that's going to get boring really quickly if there's not a little bit of challenge. So is Polarium perfect? No, they are far from perfect. They have all kinds of problems. There are things that are still wrong in Raid in 2025, but there are plenty of things that are fun in Raid. There are plenty of things that are progressing well in Raid. There are things that Raid does correctly, that does well, and I'm having fun playing Raid Shadow Legends in 2025, and I'm not afraid to say it. So let me know down below, what are some of your favorite places in Raid? I do actually appreciate negative comments, good constructive criticism, but let's try to talk about some of the good stuff. Let's try to keep this a little bit positive. And you know what? I understand if there's some things you don't like, or maybe you disagree with me on certain things. I'm sure you're not going to agree with me on some of the things that are my favorites. But let me know what's your favorite. Let me know some of the things that you're enjoying in Raid. Let me know why you're coming back and continuing to play Raid again and again and again. Because I can also tell you that probably one of the best things about Raid is the community. You guys are absolutely amazing. Much love. Thank you all for all the support, all the kind words. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. You guys are absolutely amazing. And have a wonderful day. And until the next video, I am Bront CatHerder.